Welcome to Live, Life Inspired Views for Every Day. My name is Chris Meyer, and I'm a curious soul. Over the past 40 years, I've learned so much from the stories I tell. There are many stories that I've told over 1,000 times. These have become, in some ways, identity stories for me because they are important to what I value in this life. Through my research in resiliency, I learned that there are internal and external protective factors that create motivation and abilities to face and rise above adversities or challenges we may face. One of the protective factors of resiliency is purpose. I've discovered several stories that reflect what I see as my purpose in life. They validate within me that I am here on this earth for a reason. Today, I decided to share two of my purpose stories. I have shared them before in these podcasts, but good stories need to be told over and over. The first one is The Three Questions by John Muth, based on Leo Tolstoy's story of the same name. So you see, there was once a boy named Nikolai who wanted to be a good person, but didn't know the best way to do that. He had three questions he wished to find the answers to. The first one was, when is the right time to do things? The second was, who is the most important one? And the third was, what is the right thing to do? Nikolai's three friends tried to help him, but their answers to these questions just didn't seem to be the right ones. Finally, Nikolai decided to go see the old turtle Leo. Being so old, he surely would know the answers to he was seeking. When he got to Leo's, he found Leo working in his garden. Nikolai asked Leo the three questions. Leo listened, but just kept working and only smiled. Nikolai then took the shovel and helped Leo finish his work in the garden. When they were done, it began to rain, and the wind suddenly blew very hard. They were going toward Leo's cottage when they heard a cry. Nikolai raced down the path and discovered a panda lying under a fallen tree. He moved the tree and carried the wounded panda back to Leo's house. They splinted the panda's leg and then waited the storm. When the panda woke up, she said, "Where's my baby?" Again, Leo raced into the storm and down the path where he found a little panda baby, wet and shivering. He brought the scared little panda back to Leo's and put it in his mother's arms. The next morning, Nikolai's three friends came to Leo's to make sure Nikolai was safe. Nikolai was grateful for everything, but disappointed that Leo hadn't answered his three questions. Leo replied, "Oh, but your questions have been answered." Leo continued, "Yesterday, if you hadn't helped me in the garden, we might not have heard the panda's cry for help in the storm. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent helping me in the garden. The most important one was me. The most important thing to do was helping me with my garden. Then later, when you found the panda, the most important time was the time you spent mending her leg and saving her baby. The most important ones were the panda and her child. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them." Then Leo said, "Remember that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you are with, and the most important thing is to do good for the one who is standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in the world. That is why we are here." Hmm. This story centered my soul. It defined my purpose much better than any way I could have explained what I feel. Stories do that. The next story I want to share was an epiphany when I first heard it, and I believe it is one I repeat more than any other. John Blanchard sat on a park bench in New York City's Grand Central Station waiting for a woman whose face he did not know, but whose heart he loved. It started 18 months before. He found a book in a library in Florida, and it was an interesting book, but was most interesting were the words someone had written in the margins, and he wanted to find that person. He looked in the front flap and found the name Hollis Manel, New York City. He sent a letter to her and asked if she would be willing to write to him, for he was being shipped off to fight in World War II the next day. And she did. Over the next months, a friendship began to form as they shared thoughts and ideas, but it soon became a romance as they shared feelings. However, every time he asked if she would send a picture of herself, she refused, saying, "If you cared, it shouldn't matter what I look like." Now, he was back in the States, and they decided to meet at this particular park bench in New York City's Grand Central Station at 7 o'clock. He was to bring the book that they both knew so she would recognize who he was, and she said she would wear a rose in her lapel so that he would recognize who she was. So now he waited for this woman whose face he did not know, but whose heart he loved. All of a sudden, a beautiful woman in a mint green suit came in his direction. She was lovely, tall, blonde, with curls gently around her face. He was drawn to her like a magnet. Not noticing there was no rose in her lapel, he stood and walked in her direction. As she passed him by, she said, "Going my way, sailor?" And at that moment, John Blanchard saw Hollis Manel standing directly behind her. Hollis Manel was way into her late 40s, extremely overweight, graying hair stuffed into her cap, thick ankles poured into her shoes. His heart was torn with his desire to follow this woman he was so strangely attracted to, or to follow his heart. Without hesitating, he turned to the woman and said, "Miss Manel, my name is Lieutenant John Blanchard. It's a delight to meet you. Would you care to go to dinner with me?" And the woman turned to him and said, "Son, I don't know what's going on here, but the woman in that green suit begged me to put this rose in my lapel. She said if you asked me to dinner, you could meet her at the restaurant across the street. She said it was some kind of test." All of us can understand the wisdom in Hollis Manel's test. For you see, the true nature of the human spirit is often seen in its response to the unattractive. "Show me who you love," said the philosopher Hume, "and I'll tell you who you are." This week, on your bathroom mirror, write, "I will look for ways to define my purpose with a story." Join me next Monday for Live. Life inspired views for every day. I'm Chris Meyer, and I'm a curious soul.